The most effective way to learn is not through mere memorization, but rather through playful interaction with concepts until they become an intrinsic part of your understanding. Try articulating them aloud, as if you were conveying knowledge to a child. The need to memorize often indicates that true comprehension has not yet been achieved. And without genuine understanding, there is no true learning. This method of simply memorizing is a subtle trap. One might even repeat words and phrases, but the essence of knowledge will remain unattainable. Consequently, when an evaluation or the demands of real life call for the application of this knowledge, it simply won't be available. However, there is a fundamental secret. Whenever you absorb something new, don't just settle for mentally storing it. Verbalize it. Explain it. Teach it. If there's no one around, teach it to yourself. Talk to yourself in your room, in the car, during a walk, or even in the shower. Transform thoughts into audible words. The moment you can express a concept clearly and spontaneously, as if explaining it to someone else, is when that knowledge truly becomes yours. Pay attention. There's an unmistakable sign that someone genuinely masters an idea, the ability to simplify it. Anyone can hide behind complex language, but only those who deeply understand can communicate with clarity. Let me be direct. If you can't explain something simply, it's because you haven't understood it yet. Repeating sophisticated terms might impress the uninformed, but it doesn't fool reality. If you can't simplify it, you don't master it. When a concept remains confusing, entangled with multiple loose details, the problem isn't the subject itself, but how you've organized it in your mind. However, when you can take that same concept and translate it into direct, logical, and accessible words, then you've achieved true understanding. And here's the central point. Simplicity doesn't weaken knowledge. It strengthens it. The simpler it is, the more essential. The more essential, the more unforgettable. Information ceases to be a burden you carry and transforms into a tool ready to be used at any moment. That's why the greatest scientists, philosophers, and geniuses always sought clarity. They knew that the mind doesn't need to drown in complexity. It needs to visualize the structure. By learning to do this, you not only understand better, but you also never forget. This is the path of authentic learning, not accumulating words, but distilling until only the essential remains. Every time you explain something, you are strengthening your mind. It's like a muscle that doesn't grow at rest, but under challenge. Explaining is that challenge. It forces the brain to organize, review, connect, and test what it has learned. Think about it. When you only read or listen, you are in a passive position. It's as if information flows through you without taking root. But when you force yourself to teach, even if it's just to yourself, your mind shifts gears. You move from passive mode to active mode. You are no longer just receiving. You are producing, creating clarity. And here lies the magic. In this process, the brain reveals what you still don't understand. If you get stuck, if you can't explain a detail, it means you've uncovered a gap in your knowledge, and that's wonderful, because now you know exactly where you need to improve. You are no longer in the dark. Simultaneously, every time you manage to explain something clearly, something powerful happens. The knowledge sticks. It takes deep root. It stops being a temporary visitor and becomes a permanent part of your mental structure. That's why once you explain something well, you will rarely forget it afterward. This cycle, learn, explain, correct, and solidify, is what accelerates your growth in any area. The more often you repeat it, the stronger your mind will become. It's like training every day. With discipline, you achieve results that seem impossible to those who never practice. And this is exactly how the greatest thinkers reached the level of genius. They didn't memorize. They didn't accumulate dead information. They transformed explanation into their training ground. And with every explanation, they became faster, clearer, and deeper. Now I want you to understand something fundamental. This method should not be used only occasionally. It must become a daily habit. The secret is not in long study sessions, but in constant repetition, in training your mind in small intervals. You don't need hours of absolute silence or perfect conditions. On the contrary, great learners take advantage of every moment. If you're waiting for a bus, quietly explain what you just studied. If you're walking, teach yourself the concept you learned earlier that morning. If you're alone in your room, speak aloud as if you were giving a lesson. These stolen minutes of the day are hidden treasures. Most people waste them getting lost in useless distractions. You, however, can use them as a training ground for your brain. It's in these moments that knowledge solidifies, because you're not just reviewing, you're organizing and simplifying. But understand this, you don't need to be perfect. Many times you will stumble, forget, get stuck. And that's exactly where the power lies. These stumbles reveal the gaps you still need to strengthen. With each attempt, you come back sharper, clearer, more confident. When this becomes a habit, something extraordinary happens. You start to think differently. Your mind is trained to seek clarity in everything. You begin to organize ideas automatically, to separate the essential from the unnecessary, to communicate better effortlessly. And all of this stems from simple minutes scattered throughout the day. This is how a sharp mind is built, not through endless hours of forced memorization, but through small, constant rituals of explanation. A little every day, anywhere, always. Now pay very close attention, because this can change how you deal with procrastination. Whenever you feel stuck, unmotivated to start, use this method as an immediate action trigger. Instead of waiting for the right time to study or work, simply begin by explaining what you need to learn. When you explain aloud, your mind is forced to focus. It cannot wander. It cannot drift away. You break the cycle of procrastination because speaking demands presence. It's impossible to procrastinate while you're producing clarity. And here's a transformative detail. Say aloud phrases that reprogram your mind not to procrastinate. Declare, I act now. I don't postpone. I make it happen. When you hear your own voice, you create a powerful internal command. It's as if your brain is forced to believe it and obey. That's the trick. Don't wait for motivation to act. Create movement, and motivation will follow. As you hear yourself explaining, you generate an immediate sense of progress. You realize you already know something, that you've already advanced. That small step builds confidence, and confidence builds action. Procrastination is born from confusion, from the feeling that something is too big or too difficult. But when you explain, everything breaks down into simple parts. What once seemed like an insurmountable monster suddenly becomes a clear sequence of steps. And in that moment, fear disappears. The great geniuses never waited for inspiration to fall from the sky. They created clarity first, and clarity pulled everything else forward. That's exactly what you must do. Whenever you feel stuck, stop and explain. Teach yourself aloud, even if it's just for 60 seconds. That single minute is enough to break inertia and put you into motion. And once movement begins, procrastination loses its power. You are no longer a hostage to the feeling like it, because you've already created discipline. Now listen with full attention, because there's a point that separates the average student from someone who learns in an extraordinary way. The brain truly learns when it recreates. In this process, you discover paths that were never in the book, explanations that even the teacher never gave, metaphors that make sense only to you. Knowledge stops being external and becomes something shaped by your own mind. That's why geniuses seem to see the world differently. They don't memorize ready-made formulas. They reinvent, simplify, adapt. They transform every concept into something alive. And when you do this, you learn in a way that is never the same as anyone else, because no one else will ever explain it with the same words you used. Think about it. If you can explain the law of gravity with a falling apple or a mathematical formula using an example from your daily life, it means you've mastered it. You no longer depend on the original way you received the information. You own it. This is how you must learn from now on. Don't copy, recreate. Don't memorize, explain. Don't repeat, transform. That is the mark of great thinkers, and it's what will place you far above average. Now, listen with all your attention. If you take this method seriously, if you truly commit to teaching yourself every single day, something extraordinary will happen. You will leap far ahead of most people. While the majority remain stuck in rote memorization, repeating words without understanding, you'll be building real, solid, and unshakable knowledge. While others study for hours and forget the next day, you'll learn in minutes and remember forever. While they feel insecure, you'll stand with confidence, clarity, and mastery. That is the power of teaching yourself, the power of simplifying, of recreating, of transforming the difficult into the easy. It's what separates those who merely get by from those who become true references. It's what transforms an ordinary student into someone brilliant, capable of mastering any subject and applying it in real life. And here's the truth. You don't need to be a genius to learn like one. You need discipline, effort, and the courage to practice a method that seems almost too simple to be true. And that's precisely why so few ever use it. But those who do surge ahead. So let me tell you this. Every time you get up and dedicate a few minutes to teaching yourself, you're gaining ground. You're building an advantage that compounds day after day until the world can no longer ignore you. That is the true power. It's not about storing information in your head. It's about transforming information into clarity. Clarity into action and action into results. Do this and you will never be the same again. Now I want you to make a pact. Write in the comments, "I choose to learn like a genius." This phrase is your declaration that you will no longer live in the mediocrity of rote memorization, but will transform every study session into clarity, every concept into mastery. And if this lesson resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button to keep elevating your learning. And remember, those who teach learn, those who simplify master. Those who practice this every day become unstoppable.